and then all of a sudden the beat drop comes in and people go crazy.
Do you ramp up dinner like that? You drop the beat. Here's your chicken parm.
You hear the microwave humming, and then when that ding happens, that's the beat drop. Welcome to this episode of the Cool Dad Shirt Podcast. Here we are after a couple weeks off. It's outstanding to be back.
It's good to be back. Yeah, summer gets a little tough with all the moving parts, but yeah, good to be back.
Any great summer gigs for Superposition this summer? Anything lined up? You doing some recording?
We do have, we're kind of doing some recording now. We finally got to put some of this to bed. We've got all these great ideas floating around, and we've committed to start getting them on tape, so to speak. We do have a charity event in September that we're looking forward to, but right now just kind of shaping up the tone, putting stuff together, and trying to complete a few songs. Yep.
Yeah, I know you were telling me we're sort of at that age now where friends are starting to retire, which is, it's weird to think that, because internally you still feel very much, an 18, 19, or 20-year-old, and gaining perspective on that is a bit odd at times.
It is. I do still feel like a young man, and it gets interesting, as you were saying, as things go on. And it gets a little difficult, too, when the guitar player in your band is a prolific songwriter, and he just wants to write. And the last thing he needs is more time to do that. He's gonna kill the rest of us. So.
Yeah, and that's what kind of led me to that. You were mentioning him, along with others, are retiring. So I was thinking, he's got a lot of time for music now. So what will that do? Will you guys be the bottleneck? Will he be, flushing out hit after hit, wanting to get some of them recorded?
It'll be interesting. Jay loves tweaking, so he's got a Fractal Audio Systems. It's one of the high-end processors for guitar stuff. It's amazing. The Kemper and the Fractal Axe effects are amazing devices, and he just loves tweaking and finding a sound. So I think that will occupy some of his time. And if I feel he's getting ahead, I'll just ask him how to get a sound, and that'll keep him occupied for some time. How crazy we are with pedals,
I guess with retirement comes new gear purchases, right?
I think it's mandatory.
I think so. I mean, you have more time to study and figure out how things work. I wouldn't say necessarily more disposable income, right? You want to stay busy, and you've sort of planned for this time of your life, so why not burn some fresh electronics in?
Absolutely.
So speaking of Superposition, I was thinking about band names, and unlike yours being a very cool band name, I was thinking of some uncool band names and what bands there are out there that have funny or maybe not so cool band names. I was also thinking about some of the bands that I was in, and I remember that process of trying to come up with a name. And I remember, almost being embarrassed in some bands that the name was so bad you didn't even want to tell anybody. And I've even been to the point where I've contemplated quitting bands because I was so embarrassed of the name. Even if the talent and the musicians and the music was good, I felt like the name was so embarrassing. I wouldn't want to share that with anybody, and why would anybody come see us with a name so dumb? Have you ever been in any bands, Rich, where you were highly embarrassed of the name?
No. The handful that I've
of course
been,
not.
well, the handful I've been in have been pretty democratic, where like ideas were thrown at the wall. My very first band in New Hampshire, we were called Tone Salad. That's kind of a silly name. We thought we had a rationale behind it. We have all these different sounds. It's a salad of tones and tone salad. And we got a little flack for that along the way, but we all kind of laughed that off, and we tried to keep it fun, like the music was fun. So, a little goofy, but a little fun, and I think everybody in the band was cool with it. We had a pretty good run.
I mean, tone worked for Loke. Why not salad, right?
Right.
Precisely. See what I did there?
Very nice. But you're right. This is a great conversation and there's all these different things. Like you think of a band name like the Afghan Wigs. That's just a funny name, and I think that's okay because it's a funny name. It's so weird that might work on its own silliness. But then you steer into other names that have other problems, and I'd like to break down some of them. Did you want to just start going through a list, or how do you want to do this?
Yeah, we could tackle it however you want. It's funny, though, you should mention the Afghan Wigs, because I saw the Afghan Wigs at the QE2 in Albany, and I always dug that band.
It's funny. My friend, I know lots of people named Mike. My friend Mike was in a band, and he was a bass player, and they actually did a tribute to the Afghan Wigs in Clifton
Nice.
Park, and I think 4 people showed up because they're not really a chart topper, but they have a great sound. They're a unique band, and they decided we're going to play 10 songs or whatever it was by the Afghan Wigs. And they had a blast, and they did it because they love it.
Yeah.
And that's funny. But to the point, I mean, that's just a funny, silly name, and I think that works. And as far as I know, that wasn't problematic. But I know, like Hootie and the Blowfish. Darius Rucker mentioned how for at least a decade, people just kept calling him Hootie. It was just a silly name, but man, that name stuck on him, and that's what he was referred to for a very, very long time. And until he became Darius Rucker as Darius Rucker, I think a lot of people didn't even know what his name was.
I wonder also if the band was not as popular as it would get, does their name become less dumb? You know, so you take some bands, they may not have a great name, but because of their popularity, that name becomes synonymous with their sound and their music. And you might then think, well, that's a perfect name for that band. This didn't make my list of dumb band names, but you take a band called Rat. You know, that's such a weird name for a band. And then you hear the guitar intro and Lay It Down, and you're thinking, that is like such incredibly awesome 80s metal rock. That's the best name that band could have ever come up with. And had they played something else, you would think, oh, that's such a dumb name and a dumb band. You know, the name becomes almost irrelevant because you're digging that band for the sound and their music. Like, they could be called anything. They could be called Hootie and the Rat could be called Hootie and the Blowfish. And when you hear the guitar intro and Lay It Down, you would think, man, Hootie and the Blowfish were the best 80s metal hair band I've ever heard in my life.
That guy Hootie can rip on guitar, let me tell you.
Hootie. I know, and all those sweet babes on those videos.
They had it down. Yeah, no, that's a great example. And I know it's funny because it, like you said, maybe that happens after the fact. I know Johnny Resnick from Goo Goo Dolls mentioned that name really hurt them in the beginning because it was such a stupid band name. But I think people don't really think about it now. They've just become what they've become over, a few decades. But he said that actually damaged their career upon launch. But
Yeah, I can see that.
The success stands for itself now.
You mentioned going in a direction. Did you have a list? Did you want to...
Yeah, I got a couple things here. But jumping right off what you just said, hurt you going into something. There's a local band that started out here, and I was able to photograph them very early on before they made it big. And their original band name was Charlie Everywhere. And so that's an awkward Charlie Everywhere. There's a lot of syllables that don't align very well. It's kind of an awkward thing. And they were advised as they were gaining popularity to change their name, and they changed it into a sick name, and they are now national, Fantagram. Sarah and Josh have hit the big time. Their music has showed up in movies and commercials and stuff like that, and Fantagram is super cool. But they were advised to change their silly name going into the big time.
Yeah, that's a good name.
So likewise, another one, the band Hoobastank. Not only is it a dumb-sounding word, but here's the problem. It's got the word stank in it. So people need to think that even though that's not the word, that word is inside it, and stank has a negative connotation, and you should steer clear of stuff like that.
Yeah, they made my list.
Oh, good. What do you got? Give me one.
Chumbawamba.
Wasn't that that's the cousins to the Wookiees, right? Is that what? Is it a species?
It might be, but it's a long name across the tour shirt, isn't it?
I just made that up. But yes, I think that's a lot of... Yes, to fit it on a shirt, it's got to go to 12-point font. That doesn't work.
You see, I know so little about Wookiees. I missed your joke.
I made that up on the spot. It could be true for all I know.
Here's one that I was always confused, and maybe this is a separate category. There was also those band names that you heard them, and because you never saw the way they were spelt, you thought that it was a completely different name. Like this one, maybe you would agree, but the band Mott the Hoople, I think everybody thinks it's Monta Hoople, because I always thought it was Monta Hoople.
Yeah, and my brain can't make sense out of either of those words put together.
And I hope I'm not offending anybody by saying these are not great band names.
My friend Finn, the bass player in my band here in Albany, his father was an artist, and he did something super, super cool where he drew a piece of artwork. It's a complete layout, like a cityscape, and I think there's over 500 drawings of little representations of band names, and the challenge is to see if you can get all 500 something band names out of the images. For instance, there's a drawing of a nun who's kind of twisted like a pretzel, and that's of course Twisted Sister. And so there's all these little Easter eggs built in there, or descriptions, and some of them are quite literal, and some of them are a little bit of a challenge. I have that poster somewhere. Maybe we'll throw it up on our Instagram page and see if it's tiny on your phone. It's quite a big poster, but it's super super cool stuff. So again, it reminds you of some of the weird and awkward. I think one of them on there, one of the little depictions is the Flying Burrito Brothers. I think the '60s had a very strange run with just complete nonsensical names. So
the '60s did, yeah. Hot Tuna. How about that one?
I think that falls into the category I just mentioned.
Was that a '60s band?
Canned Heat.
Canned Heat.
What the hell?
That's like Sterno, right? Yeah, that's Sterno, I think.
Sterno. Now that's a cool band name, Sterno.
Sterno. If Canned Heat came out in the '60s and they were called Sterno, would they have an entirely different fan base?
I think that's an '80s hair band name, is what I think that probably should be.
I don't know if I came up with any other '60s or '70s band names. I always thought Panic at the Disco was a bit of an odd name.
Yeah, so I gotta show you. Hold on, wait. It's on this Post-it note. We'll talk about Post-it notes in a minute, but you can see I have Panic at the Disco. And interestingly enough, they put an exclamation point after the first word.
Yeah,
it's grammatically awkward right out the gate.
At the Disco, yeah.
So if the name isn't weird enough the first time you hear it, it's even more weird the first time you see it, because there's punctuation after the first word and then no punctuation at the end of the sentence. It's bizarre. It gives you no indication of anything. It could be a news story for all I know.
And speaking about punctuation, I don't want to go off on a tangent here, but here's
Please do.
Here's something else that always bothered me. Song names that had a couple words and then some parentheses with some other words in parentheses. I don't think there's any need for that in a song title. Do you?
I think they're going for like the subtext. Like you might think it's this, but it's actually about this. Or so it does feel a little condescending, like they have to explain more to you.
Yeah. So if you need to put it into parentheses so you know what the song name really is, just name it that in the first place. I don't know why you need to confuse us with here's the name of the song, which probably doesn't appear in the name of the song, and here's really what we want the name of the song to be. I don't understand.
I think my first exposure to that was Journey's Frontiers album, Separate Ways, arguably their biggest hit off that album. And I believe in parentheses it says Worlds Apart. Again, I didn't know what that served. Worlds Apart, I don't think appears in the lyrics, I don't think. So I remember being intrigued by that. What year did that come out? 80. Let me see if I can guess. I want to say 83.
Yeah, you're right.
84?
83?
Okay.
Yeah, 83 it was released. January.
You're fact-checking me now?
January.
Yeah, January of 83.
Yeah, you're right there.
Check the song list. Is it in parentheses?
It is.
There?
Worlds Apart. Separate Ways, Worlds Apart.
And that began my first exposure and curiosity about the parenthetical tagline after a song title.
Interestingly, Worlds Apart is the second line lyric of that song.
Okay, there you go.
Here we stand, worlds apart.
Maybe that was the working title.
That was
they
it.
Said, well,
hearts broken in 2, 2, 2. Yep, that's
not a factorial. That's just repeating an important part.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's it. It's the lyric on the second line. Okay, back to our list of names here. We could talk more about parentheses for hours, I'm sure, but back to the subject at hand. Another, and this is a band that I do truly enjoy, but a bit of an odd name. The.
Okay, yeah.
Another great band. Love that band. I still listen to them very regularly. I'm not sure the origin of the name. I didn't go as far as looking these up. Maybe that's an exercise for another day. How about Mike and the Mechanics? I was always puzzled by that.
So before Genesis,
you know the history?
I don't know the answer. Mike Rutherford, the guitar player for Genesis, right?
Yeah.
That's who that is. He went and did a solo project, and maybe it wasn't going as well as he had hoped, and had a day job. I have no idea.
I don't know where the Mechanics came from, but it was an odd name.
Interesting.
What else you got, Rich?
I want to keep it relatively short just for the discussion part of this, but I think there was. I wish I should have looked this up, or maybe you can. Some time ago, I came across a list of famous bands and what their original name was. Def Leppard had a funny one.
That's a good one.
There's a bunch of, I can't recall any off the top of my head, but I think Rolling Stone had an article about band names that changed right before they got famous, and how that played out. Whether they were advised to do it, whether they changed their own mind, or what happened. But I think that's a funny list too.
That's another great discussion. I think U2, I think they were called The Hype before they were U2.
Really?
Which it's not a bad name either, but I think before they were U2, they were The Hype. Another funny name, and I don't know the origin or the meaning of this. It could mean something else. Kaja Goo Goo. Again, very odd name, but when you think of their music and the era in which they were releasing music, I think that is absolutely an awesome and perfect name for that band.
Their big hit "Too Shy" was could only be written by a band called Kaja Goo Goo.
Yeah.
And I recently found out famous comedian, one of my favorite comedians, Dennis Miller from like the late 80s, early 90s. He is married to the hot chick in that video.
Really?
Yeah.
Man, it's a small world.
Who would have put those two together?
Were they married for a lengthy duration?
I believe they are still married to this day.
Wow, not common in the world of the arts.
The entertainment folk, yeah.
That's really all. I understand, there's probably tons out there, and I certainly don't want to offend anybody. It is funny to think some bands have somewhat silly names, which we don't necessarily understand the meaning. Again, thanks for their great music. Otherwise, we would probably not have a opportunity or an interest in listening to some of them.
Well, like I said, sometimes they take on a life of their own, and that's kind of what makes them special. But I can see how that might be a hurdle coming out of the gate.
I have one more other musical reference, and not to make the show, again, too musical heavy. So I'm poking around looking at some pop culture news, and I stumble upon best college movies that capture the drama of campus life. I'm sort of interested, so I kind of click the list, and I'm reading some of these movie names, and of course, Legally Blonde. Mm-hmm. That comes up, and then there's a couple more. And then I'm scrolling down and I see another movie called Everybody Wants Some. And I have no idea what the movie's about. Because the way my mind works, I immediately think of, oh, that's such a great Van Halen song. And then the next thing I know, I'm listening to Van Halen. And then like 5-6 tracks later, I'm still listening to Van Halen. And now I'm wondering, well, what the hell was I doing 20 minutes ago? I have no idea. But this Van Halen is so great.
Well, that's not a bad place to be. And I think that song appears in, doesn't that... Better Off Dead, John Cusack, doesn't he have like a hallucination? He's working at a restaurant and like the things start, oh man, we got to look this up. I think the song comes on and he's cooking food or something. The food starts moving around and like a vegetable starts singing. Everybody, I think I'm butchering this. We may have to edit this out if I'm completely wrong. Maybe it's my own hallucination. I'm not sure, but that song I do believe appears in, and that's a cult classic too.
Oh yeah,
Better Off Dead.
I don't know if that's in there. I would have to look.
All those 80 movies all kind of run together. Yeah. I could be wrong about the song. I'm right about the song, but I could be wrong about the movie or the hallucinating vegetables. I don't know.
If that's not in a movie, that sounds like it should be a great John Hughes movie.
That's funny. If it is, we're gonna put that in our Instagram post with this little bit behind it.
So that was my Van Halen story.
Esquire raves.
The Cool Dad Shirt podcast is marginally entertaining, sometimes funny, and strangely appealing to hot moms.
I sent you a link on Instagram. It's a clip from South Park. Did you happen to catch what I sent you yesterday?
I did not, Rich. I apologize.
So there's a clip. This goes back many years, and there's some sort of summit in Jerusalem, and the news is covering it, and it shows the stage. Finally we have some peace in the Middle East, and it's got like the the crescent of Islam. It's got the Jewish David Star there, and it's got the cross for Christianity, and it said today we come together and stuff like that. And while they're talking on stage, representatives from each religion, you see the symbols start merging together, and as they start coming together, it morphs into the VH, and Van Halen runs out on stage, and Ain't Talking About Love comes on, and the crowd goes bonkers. And so South Park shifts from the animation to video of like people jumping up and down, and they time it right to the hey, 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 hey.
That's awesome.
Dude, it's one of the funniest, coolest Van Halen South Park things I've ever seen. It's a hoot.
I got to check it out.
It's waiting in your Instagram Messenger as we speak.
Something to look forward to after this call. I don't know if I'll use this in the show. Somebody mentioned to me, a friend from college sent me a note the other day, or just sharing about the fun we had as a rhythm section playing in the college jazz band. And one of the things that we did was we went on this little mini tour and we played at some high schools and colleges. And he pointed out to me that apparently we met Rick Beato at Ithaca when we performed there.
Really?
I think in 1987 or 1988. Yeah, which I don't remember. And I believe it to be true. I don't think he would just come up with such a story just to fabricate
Well,
something.
he is a New Yorker, and he was very active in the music scene with his own band and then later producing, so it's entirely possible.
Yeah, and I believe he studied at Ithaca College, and I suspect he might have been, an associate professor or something there around that time. So it's it's not too far-fetched. I don't, unfortunately, remember meeting him or seeing him. Apparently, we were there at the very least at the same time.
I think this is the perfect catalyst to get him on our show. He's got a bit of a following. If we could pull that off.
Could you imagine? First of all, here's what I envision. Rick Beato sitting in his chair with about $3 million worth of audio gear in the background. Beautifully lit, soft lighting. It's not all clear. It's got that real soft Barbara Walters lighting. Barbara Walters lighting?
That's
Her
exactly.
face is never clear. It's always somewhat, not smoky, but always hazy. There's always a haze on the light. It's very soft.
It's the soft focus. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's done intentionally.
So that's Rick Beato's $2 to $3 million gear. You can already see in the background. I would have, Rick Beato would be in his studio. I'd be in mine here, and you would see like the $129 Focusrite with a kinked up 5-foot XLR going to my $99 Shure SM57, and Rick will be carving out all sorts of time to answer any of our questions.
Yes, indeed.
What do you have for me next, gentlemen?
Can you say something more interesting? Because I got to go. Actually, I just watched an episode, and he was talking about 2 words that destroyed a career. And he jokes around about when his band called Billionaire, I think they were in Atlanta at the time, and they were coming up in the late 90s. And somehow there was a connection to the band Creed when they were on fire in the late 90s. And they were offered an opening spot for Creed. And for a bunch of reasons, they were unable to do that. Well, Creed had later come to Atlanta, and they were performing the same night that his band was performing later in the evening. So anyway, things didn't work out, and they were going to try to open for them in Atlanta or something to that effect. And the singer in the band had a few pops and was just getting a little mouthy. And they were performing at a bar later after the Creed show, and he's like, "How about that band Creed? Creed sucks." And he just kind of kept going on and on and on, only to find out at the end the band was in the back of this bar because they wanted to check these guys out. They were thinking about like working with them or possibly producing them. And the agent came up and said, yeah, they heard everything. You guys are finished. He said the 2 words. He goes, "This is why you shouldn't drink before you get on stage and say things you don't mean." He goes, because he was just being stupid. And he goes, that was pretty much the end of our career going forward.
Oh, that's too bad. Yeah.
It's a great story
It's a
if you ever
great
check
story.
it out. If you're a fan of his page, check it out. It's great.
Yeah. I love the Rick Beato stuff. I'll tell you a similar story. I was playing in the ska band. We had a fairly decent following. We drew pretty good crowds. We played a lot. And someone approached me in between sets, and they were asking me about my drums and what drum heads I use and why I use them. And then he asked, how come I don't use Evans drum head? What do I think about Evans drum heads? At the time, this was in the, I guess, mid-90s. I just didn't prefer that sound. And I kind of said that in as many words, that I just didn't like the heads, I didn't like the sound, which was a fair response, and it was an honest response. And then it turned out that he was the head of product development for Evans drum heads. I don't think that I offended him. I think I gave him a very honest answer. Now the drum heads are, it's completely night and day. The drum heads, they sound great. They have a huge variety of heads with finishes and plies. So, similar to your story, you don't know who's there.
So you lost an endorsement deal, but you offered them incredible product development. They really should be thanking you at this point. Yes.
So I single-handedly turned the company around.
With a couple flippant responses in a bar. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my Evans drumhead story.
That's hysterical. Yeah, good
I
stuff.
like your spin on it, though. I feel much better knowing that it was me that completely turned and reshaped the company.
Yes. Well, I mean, you could have really flamed out on them. These things suck. I mean, you could have gone to town, but no, we're going to take the win with you pointed them in the right direction.
I think I did say they sound like ass. I think I might have said that, though.
Did you really?
I might have said they sound like.
Oh, no.
They sound like ass. Yeah.
No, we'll run with that. That's good.
I found myself doing this again today. I do it apparently all the time. When you're driving in the car, and I have a long drive, like for example, the other day there was an accident on the expressway. You may not believe this, but it took me 3 hours and 20 minutes to get to work.
Oh my God.
So I find myself unknowingly entertaining myself, and I'm horrible at it, but I do impressions. I'm in the car and I'm trying to do a Christopher Walken impression. And all of a sudden, the next thing I know is I sound like someone doing an impression of Christopher Walken doing an impression of John Travolta. It's like the same voice. But I started thinking about the story of Dave Grohl telling the story of Christopher Walken introducing them on Saturday Night Live. And then I was watching Christopher Walken skits when he was on Saturday Night Live, where they were all talking like Christopher Walken. So while I was driving, I was also trying to I was trying to talk like Christopher Walken.
So, no, first of all, give me the story. I think I've heard it before, but the Christopher Walken was asking how to introduce them.
Yeah.
Go ahead, tell the story.
Yeah, he says, he asked Dave and the band how to introduce them, like, where's the accent? Is it on foo or is it on fighter? So naturally they're like, oh, it's on fighter. It's on fighter. So he does the old, ladies and gentlemen, Foo Fighters.
So Christopher
it's
Walken.
so great. So I was thinking, can you imagine, ladies and gentlemen, superposition?
It makes no sense, but now it's fixed.
So great. Yeah. Foo Fighters.
Well, it's funny you say that. Dana Carvey, when he talks about, and he's a master impressionist, he says exactly what you said, where he starts like in a department with somebody the way they talk, and then like you add this to that, then you it's an amalgamation of different speech patterns and maybe dialects or areas that people are from, and you kind of put it all together. So you're right on track, buddy.
I'll keep at it. He is amazing, though, Dana Carvey. He is so good at impersonations. And like you said, he kind of makes it his, but it's still a really awesome impersonation.
Well, right, and the thing he does, it's not dead on. I think he just runs a characterization, and what makes him great, because he does some political stuff, but it's never political. It's just a ridiculous exaggeration of a personality, and that's what makes it great. Like, you're not offending anybody. He just maxes out some quirkiness in a person's personality, and that's what makes it awesome.
Yeah. So what's happening around the house? You got some jobs, some tasks to bang out this weekend?
So I have a complete love affair with Post-it notes. I don't know. I am a maniac. There's 3 of them on my laptop at the moment. I've been taking notes as we talk right here on this. And I slap them on the door on the way out to the garage, because this is how the phone is super cool. I do reminders in the phone, but sometimes you need a physical reference. Yeah. And I have a list of... Every weekend, I write some stuff up.
Oh, what do you got on there?
And I usually get 4 to 5 on a list, and I usually get through 3 or 4 of them. Let's see here. I got to order some more coffee filters. I'm running dangerously low on that. I got to catch up with my brother, speaking of coffee. So, those are all things that I kind of operate on.
Yeah.
Are you a list maker?
I am, very much so. I got them all over my desk. And then I sometimes hate to throw them away, so I get all my Post-it notes, and I put a big binder clip on them just in case I need to reference them in my archives.
What did I do in mid-April?
Exactly. I got it.
Seriously, how often do you go back to that, Mike?
Never. But, after a while, I do eventually throw them out. There's some funny stuff on there, too. Like, I make a lot of like, songs I want to remember. I was listening to some music. I was making a playlist, and I wanted to make sure I added the Smithereens, the Replacements, and Social Distortion to that playlist.
Oh, that's good stuff.
So that was...
I dig all those bands. I'm a huge Replacements fan. But you know what I do along the same lines? I find myself, and maybe you do this too, when listening to Spotify, if I got some sort of radio on where I'm getting a variety of artists delivered to me and something pops up unexpectedly, I do take a quick screenshot to like go remember this song.
I do that all the time. I got screenshots of things I want to remember. I do that with social media too. Like, I'm not committed enough to like and follow or subscribe. But I want to remember their social media names so I can go back and take a look.
Yeah, like our listeners, I'm sure when we say something really funny, they'll take a screenshot of the exact moment
Absolutely.
that we said the funny thing, and they kind of archive that to go tell their friends and relatives as our audience continues to grow.
Yeah, and with them, there's no hesitation with liking and following that.
No, and a big thank you to all of you who are still listening at this point. Thank you very much.
You know, that's a good point, Rich. We don't take much opportunity to thank our dedicated fans and listeners, and we should. We should thank them for their continued support and following and liking the show.
On a very serious note, I can't believe when we go look at the analytics, the fact that we have people coming back and listening to this nonsense over and over again. Seriously, a huge thank you that you're hanging in there and digging our shenanigans. So thanks very much.
I'll pause so we can all let that digest.
Reflect upon that for a moment. Yeah, so tell a friend.
Please smash that like button. In the words of the great Mike, please smash that like button.
Mike Weissman, yeah.
So I got some jobs to do too. As you know, my wife is Italian, and you don't F with like Italian wives and Italian women, so you don't really F with them. So she comes out and I'm mowing the lawn, and again, I'm paraphrasing a bit here, but it was somewhat to the effect of, when you're done with the lawn, make sure you treat for all the ants and turn the sprinklers on. Of course, I said, yeah, of course, I'm going to do that. No problem. I will finish this lawn. I will treat for the ants. I'll spread some lime, and I'll make sure the sprinklers get on. And that was all fine. I didn't think much about it, and then she walked away, and I thought, could you imagine... if I were to say something similar, like, can you imagine if I walked in and she was inside, in the kitchen doing something?
No,
maybe I don't know.
I cannot imagine. No.
Just doing anything, and I walked in and said, after you get done knocking out those dishes, why don't you hit this floor with a quick mop and then throw that laundry in? Could you imagine what effect that would have?
Nice knowing you, Mike.
So I'm like, why is that any different? When you're done banging out those dishes, how about hitting this floor with a quick mop? It seems innocent enough, but I'm just saying.
That is not a two-way street.
It would be funny, though. It would be really funny.
It'd be a very funny way to die, yes.
Sadly, I didn't prepare a question of the week for you. I sort of forgot all about the one-off that I had a couple weeks ago about your preferences for pizza, so I'll have to double down next episode.
Yeah, and I ruined it right out of the
I
gate with qualifying everything. For Christ's sake, can you just pick one? Jeez.
I was so deflated after that last attempt. I don't know if I'll ever revisit that again.
I don't even know why I work with you. God.
If I wanted someone to answer my question with the question, I would have talked to any of the 1,000 Italians that I know.
That's right. When a question could be answered with 700 words instead of one, I would have talked to relatives, not you.
I got plenty of relatives I can dial up.
I think we got a keeper here, man. Yeah, good stuff.
So I don't have anything else at hand, so I guess we'll just kind of wrap this one up.
Yeah, I think that's fine. We'll do. Do we need a little tagline or something at the end of this, or? We're still. Yeah, we got to throw. Is it? Unless you got a question or a cool dad tip.
I don't have a cool dad tip. The only tip would be don't ever say to your Italian wife when you get done with those, when you get done banging out those dishes, why don't you hit this floor with a quick mop? I mean, that would be the cool dad tip. If I had to come up with one in this episode, that would be where I would go.
I think you hit it.
Italian or not, probably it's good advice not to.
That may be universal across.
So don't suggest to any wife that there's more that she could be doing in the cleaning department. I remember.
Hey, I'm doing you a favor. I'm clarifying the situation here. You're welcome.
Yes. I think I might have told this story. We went to my aunt and uncle's one year for Christmas, and this would be the uncle that set himself on fire. We went to his and my aunt's house.
It's a never-ending well of material.
So not to make this story too long-winded, here's the story. My aunt and uncle invite us over for Christmas dinner, and we go there. And my aunt is now showing us and my mom and dad what she had gotten for Christmas from my uncle. And one of several gifts was a new vacuum cleaner. And I caught and overheard my mother whisper in my father's ear, "If you are ever to buy me a gift like that, I will shove it up your ass." And I will never forget that memory. As a very, very young kid, I remember my mom saying that to my dad.
You were delivered a life lesson as a youngster that obviously has stuck with you your entire life.
Taught me something, yes. Very valuable. What to buy and what to not buy women for Christmas.
Oh, good stuff.
All right, dude.
All right, dude. We'll wrap it up here.
Let you get to it.
And can't wait to get some stuff.
Yeah.